Good morning, folks. We'll give a couple minutes for people to roll in here. Really appreciate y'all joining us. Just for a quick sound check. I'm wondering if folks can hear me, and I think you can give a thumbs up if you can. All right, I see some thumbs. Really appreciate it. We'll try to get started maybe just a couple minutes after 11 o'clock. Matthew, Will, and Caroline, can you see my screen? Yes, perfect. For those just joining, we're going to get started probably at 11:02. Just giving a little bit more time for people to join in just in case they're zooming between meetings right now. Feel like I should have included some charming elevator music while we wait. Since I don't have charming elevator music, before I get started, which I'll get started soon, in the chat, if you were able to access that, let us, I don't know how you let us know if you can't access it, but in the chat, share your name, your employer, and your favorite place to ride a bike in Minnesota. Oh, someone used the chat, so it looks like it's working. Appreciate it. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. It's 11:02. So I'm going to have you all continue to share in the chat your name, employer, and your favorite place to ride a bike in Minnesota. Will, do you think you can maybe paste that prompt into the chat for our folks to be able to answer that just in case they don't catch the beginning slide here? Um, I'll get into intros here quick. Thanks, Will. I'm just going to look at some of the people's choices here, though. I see anywhere downhill. I love it. That's probably one of my favorite places to bike as well. Except when I got an e-bike, then going uphill became a lot more joyful. Longer Trail, Loose Line, River Trails, Mississippi River Trails, Wheelock Parkway. Oh, that one's great. Thanks, Jimmy. Park Point, Browns Creek, Texas Skate Park. Love those two. Como Ave Bikeway. I use that one to get to work, and it is wonderful. Another vote for Wheelock Parkway. Cool. Keep them rolling in. I'll go ahead and get started on our next slide here and officially kick off our webinar. So I appreciate y'all for joining us here today to talk about the statewide bicycle system plan. It is really our government and tribal partners that really make biking better in Minnesota, and MnDOT's along for the ride, and we try to help move that along as much as we can as well. And so I'm really looking forward to our set of webinar series where we could discuss how we can work together better in the future to do this. Before I get any further, I need to read a Tennyson warning for folks who are on this call. MnDOT OTAP believes that recording this webinar will further its mission and is the most beneficial way to memorialize this event. If your camera is on, your image, which may be private data, may be captured during this event. You are not required to allow MnDOT to use your image, and there are no consequences for declining to do so. The recording may be accessible to anyone who has a business or legal right to access it. By participating, you are authorizing the data collected during this recording to be maintained by MnDOT. To opt out of the recording, please exit now. All right, let's start off with some introductions. So for those who don't know me, I'm Jesse Thornson. I work at MnDOT within the Office of Transit and Active Transportation. I am the Active Transportation Systems Designer, and I am kind of the main point of contact at MnDOT and the project manager for our statewide Bicycle Plus system plan and other pedestrian and bicycle statewide planning documents. I am joined here by other folks who are awesome colleagues who are also co-managing the MnDOT Bicycle Plus system plan. That would include Caroline Ketchum, as well as Will Wislow. Of course, MnDOT's not doing this alone. We're getting the helpful assistance of some very talented folks who do business here in Minnesota. That we have our consultant team who is led by Alta. Matthew Deardahl is joined here as well. And he has support from folks with Humanize Minnesota, Terrasoma, TC2, and Stantec. The really great thing about working with this team is that we have been working with various people on these teams in different capacities for well over 10 years now. And so they have really been a great part of helping shape what MnDOT does as far as goes for bicycle planning and bicycle facility design. So you might be wondering, what have I gotten myself into? What is this government partner coordination webinar thing? So I appreciate y'all for signing up and taking that leap with me. This is actually a new thing that we're trying to do within a statewide planning process for the Bicycle Plus system plan. What we're planning to do here is have a series of 4 to 5 webinars over the course of 18 months of our planning process. And these will occur at key points in that planning process. So from now until mid 2026 is when we plan to essentially have these webinars. Our idea here with these webinars is that we will try to have a system for collaboration, coordination, in ways that meet your capacity. So we don't want to overtax people with specific advisory committees. We also don't want to pick favorites for specific advisory committees. And so what we're trying to do here is create a system, create a venue for people to share their feedback, to dive deeper with us if their capacity allows us to do that. These webinar times in the future will be shared through our existing communications channels, and we'll make sure to email the list of registrants here to share when the next ones happen. We don't have those quite scheduled yet. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about what is the Bike Plus plan. Importantly, we're also going to focus on who bikes in Minnesota. We are then going to talk about how are we listening to those folks and everyone else who would like to bike. We'll finish off a little bit with why should we be investing in bicycling and what's next. So let's start off here. What is the Bike Plus plan? So the Bike Plus plan, for those who don't know, MnDOT has a family of plans, and these family of plans reside within the overarching Minnesota Go 50-year vision. This really allows us to understand what are we trying to achieve as an agency. That 50-year vision then gets a little bit more teeth and a little bit more understanding and detail through the creation of our statewide multimodal transportation plan. Essentially, the statewide multimodal transportation plan says, how are we going to achieve that vision? What are the commitments and what are the targets? How are we going to measure our success towards achieving that vision? And then under that is where our modal and system plans fall, which is where the Bicycle Plus system plan is. So these modal and system plans really do a lot of different things. But ultimately, what it boils down to is they set the tone for our decision-making process, and it helps determine what our system's going to look like and how that gets funded and prioritized. A brief history here of the statewide bicycle system plan. We've actually had a statewide bicycle system plan, I believe, since the early 80s. And our most recent bicycle system plan was adopted in 2016. The vision of this existing statewide bicycle system plan is bicycling is safe, comfortable, and convenient for all people. It did a lot of different things. One of the things that it really did was establish priority long distance corridors around the state. Fast forward just a couple years, and we then adopted district bicycle plans. So for those who don't know, MnDOT has 8 districts in which a lot of our state highway construction projects are funded and constructed. These district bicycle plans help establish district-level MnDOT bicycle investment priorities and do a little bit more work towards understanding what is it going to cost for various bicycling improvements. So now we're in 2025. We know that there is a needed update to our bicycle system plan. So why are we updating it? Well, one, it's been almost 10 years. And a lot of things have happened in that last 10 years. And some past work in other contexts includes we have our statewide transportation goals with the Minnesota Go Vision. We have updated engineering guidance. We have a complete streets policy. We have our advancing transportation equity initiative, climate change and greenhouse gases and VMT commitments and targets. And of course, there's been some bike-like trends, which we'll talk about. So what is the direction for our new Bicycle Plus system plan? We've decided to create a vision that was centered around some investigatory questions. So we wanted to talk about the why and who, the what, the how, where, and when. So when centering on the why and who, we really wanted to be able to communicate why state, regional, and local bicycle networks are important and who benefits from each of those scales of the networks. We then want to talk about the what and what it means to create a framework to eliminate barriers to safe, convenient, and comfortable bicycling, particularly where MnDOT has ownership and stewardship responsibilities and where we partner with lots of other folks. How we want to go about doing this? We want to be able to create bicycle facility project development and investment decision-making guidance that navigates within the things that MnDOT does, the policy, the planning, and practice context. Where do we want to invest in bicycle facilities? This is probably the part of the plan where everyone wants to go to first. Our statement here is that we want to develop a bicycle investment prioritization tool that is complementary of other MnDOT active transportation tools. You may have heard of things like PAWS, which is our priority tool from our statewide pedestrian system plan, SPACE tool, which is something that our Office of Traffic Engineering uses often. And so we want to develop a tool that is complementary to those other tools. Another way to think about the where in this case is in this Bicycle Plus system plan, MnDOT is going to have less focus on drawing lines on the map that may or may not line up with your lines on the map, and more set us up to be good partners where others, like you all, are drawing lines on the map to complete local and regional bicycle networks and be able to prioritize where those locations interact with the things we have a lot more ownership and stewardship responsibilities with. And then, of course, when are we going to be doing this? We want to be able to develop statewide investment planning scenarios that are tied to specific futures and cost estimates that can inform our Minnesota State Highway Investment Plan. Sorry. So the question here might be, so what is a bike-like mode? What's the plus? Why are we including more than just bikes in our statewide bicycle system plan? And I think it's actually fairly simple. We really want to be able to focus on and make it safe and comfortable for people who are already helping us achieve these transportation goals that are very similar to bikes. And how are they similar? Well, for one, these have a very similar speed. They also have a similar weight. If you think about those two things together, it's kind of, they share a similar amount of kinetic energy. They also are things that already legally used on a lot of different bicycle facilities around the state. And so you may be thinking of things like an e-scooter or a one wheel or even a skateboard. All these other things are going to be a part of this process. While the focus will remain on bikes and e-bikes, these things will also be considered because of their similarities. So one of our early deliverables that we had in our planning process is we wanted to understand our context in which we are planning in. And we can't understand that context without reviewing a few different things. We wanted to review our statewide level plans that we have for other things, as well as our statewide plans, as well as our local plans, your all's plans. We reviewed at least 14 different local plans that came from various city levels, county levels, MPO levels. And we really wanted to understand what is MnDOT's role in building and helping bike networks come along. So we boiled it down to actually 8 elements that we feel that MnDOT plays a role in partner bike networks. One of those is providing planning guidance. We also feel like MnDOT is providing a role in supporting local planning processes. Another thing is prioritizing locations for bicycle investment, and that's mostly related to prioritizing our own locations for bicycle investment, but sometimes folks would like to use our own prioritization system as well if they cover the whole state. 4 is, and this is the one that probably most people think about, is trying to improve bicycle conditions along and across the trunk highway system. Another important aspect is administering infrastructure funding through things like our active transportation program. And another very visible thing that folks have been using is we often feel like we are providing a lot of design guidance through our MnDOT Bicycle Facility Design Manual. Administering the Safe Routes to School program is very top of mind for most folks probably, as yesterday was Bike to School Day and May is Bike Month. And then finally, a lot of folks have utilized our count program and count and data program that we have here at MnDOT. And so these are the roles that we felt we've seen through our state plans as well as our local plans, and we put them all on this list here. And so we actually have 2 questions here. And we will launch a poll to see what you all think. Do these roles match your community's experience in partnering with MnDOT to create your bike network? And another important question is, has your community felt like MnDOT has been helpful in partnering, has been a helpful partner in creating a safe and comfortable bicycle network? So I'll give a minute or 2 here for folks to answer that poll. If you feel like you have a more nuanced answer that you would like to give for this particular poll, what I do is encourage you to take the poll, but then also maybe add your answer into the chat if one of these options doesn't meet exactly what you think. So if you've taken the poll, you can automatically already see the results. Once we close the poll, you'll be able to see the end result too, and we'll have you just keep it open for now. But right now it looks like around the highest answer here for the first question is like, do these roles match your community's experience? And the highest answer is MnDOT does fill a few of these roles in your community. Maybe not all of these roles, but certainly understand that some of these roles have been helpful. Only a few of you have mentioned that MnDOT doesn't fill any of these roles in your community. On the second question here, has MnDOT or has your community felt like MnDOT has been a helpful partner in developing a safe and comfortable bicycle network? Looks like we're getting about middle ground there. So not necessarily super helpful on the 3 thumb side, but also not as many folks on the 1 thumb side either. Most folks are voting, over half are voting on the 2 right in the middle. So I appreciate y'all entering that poll for us. And maybe we'll keep it open for just a little bit longer while I advance slides to give folks some time to answer that question if needed. Okay. All right. So we're talking about roles. So I think it's worth mentioning the different types of Bike Plus planning roles that are going to be involved in this planning process to give you a bigger picture of who's going to be involved. So we have our core Bike Plus planning team, which is most of the folks who are here on this call who are organized the call. We also have our project advisory committee, and these are in more of an advisory role. We have our district advisory committee. So you might be wondering what is the difference between these two, and I'll get into that on the next slide. We also have in our green circles at the bottom of the slide, public engagement, as well as diverse bicycling perspectives focus group. Again, we'll expand on these, what these are in further slides as well. And these two groups of folks play more of an engagement role. And of course, we have y'all who hear a part of this conversation in this webinar. We have our government partner update and feedback webinars. These are MPOs, RDCs, county, cities, tribal governments. These are all the folks who really help us implement that vision of bicycling being safe, comfortable, accessible within the state of Minnesota. And we'll explain a little bit more on that as well. So our Bike Plus planning committees. You might be wondering who is on those committees. So we have a district advisory committee, and then we have a project advisory committee. The district advisory committee is really consisted of a lot of the folks who work within our districts at MnDOT. As I mentioned earlier, we have 8 districts, and those folks are really kind of in the day-to-day operations planning of our MnDOT system. We really feel that working with these folks will increase the plan's usability and effectiveness, and it will help us draw the focus of this plan on implementation within local realities, which is kind of where some of y'all come into. Our project advisory committee is folks mostly at our central office who are leaders and managers within our different divisions and offices. And these folks will really help us make sure our alignment with Minnesota's transportation goals and statewide planning commitments. If you want to know where we're going, where we've been so far, here's our tentative plan outline. We are currently right now at the very beginning of our phase 1 of engagement, which is our insight and engagement phase. And we'll have a few more slides dedicated towards what that engagement will look like. Coming up in the spring of next year, we'll have a draft plan for public review. And then spring of next year, we'll also have our engagement phase 2, where people will be able to kind of see what that draft plan looks like. And we're looking to sort of wrap up this planning process in the late summer of 2026, where we will then deliver some MnDOT Bike Plus plan capacity building resources. And these will be available to our MnDOT staff. And if capacity is available, we'll also open up these capacity building resources to external partners too, which could be y'all. So again, we talking about the plus of our plan. We may be trying to figure out like why is the plus here? And I mentioned similar weight, similar speed, that type of thing. But in particular, we are going to have a little bit more focus on e-bikes, and I'll explain that a little bit of that why that is. So research does suggest that e-bikes, and other bike-like modes all together can help us get us closer to meeting our transportation goals and greenhouse gas targets. It will also help us meet our MnDOT statewide multimodal transportation plan commitments. Even more so, if you look at the American Planning Association's latest trend report for planners, it talks about the demand for e-bikes increasing, and it continues to increase. Yet traffic deaths for people who are biking and for walking are also increasing. And there is a lack, part of this is a lack of appropriate and safe infrastructure. And it points to how inequitable this current transportation planning is. And it calls for planners to continue to design for and advocate for safer streets for all users. When thinking about e-bikes, you might be able to think about it as just this other form of technology. And if you think about it like this, and you think about that, you will understand that we can maybe draw some links between this and some past research that has been done by a sociologist. His name was Everett Rogers, where he tried to classify consumers in distinguished groups by different buying habits. As part of this process, he created this technology adoption life cycle. And what this life cycle does is it describes the adoption or acceptance of new products, new technology, new innovations. Um, and in this life cycle, we have a few different groups who are essentially kind of classified into certain buying groups. We have on the left side of the screen, we have the early market, and on the right side of the screen, we have the mainstream market. So on the left side of the screen with the early market, these are really the innovators and early adopters, tech enthusiasts. We believe that e-bikes right now are likely on the later stage of the early early adopters. Where we feel that e-bikes are heading is the chasm. So what is the chasm? So you can see that in between all these different stages of consumers, there's a little white gap, but there's one white gap that is actually larger than the other ones. And this is really called the chasm. And what this means is that all these groups, when they go to buy something, they usually self-reference within their own group. And the jump from one group to the other is usually a little bit of a barrier, but not too bad, except for in the chasm where you're trying to go from the early market to the mainstream market. Here is where technology and new products go to either succeed or die, or stay kind of in that early adopter sort of phase. And so we when we are developing this planning document, we know that we are at a place where we don't know exactly what's going to happen with e-bikes, but we need to make sure that we're planning for either scenario. The interesting thing about this technology adoption lifecycle is it kind of helps influence what we should do in our planning process. And so what it helps us understand what we should do is we should really help make the plan relatable. So one of the ways to cross that chasm is to start to pick off smaller segments of each of those technology consumers within those gaps. And by doing that, we can kind of we can try to include lived stories and tell how folks are including this particular mode in their everyday lives. One of the ways we're doing that is through the creation of a diverse bicycling perspectives focus group that will be a part of this plan. We'll amplify diverse and newly previously unheard voices in the plan, which includes people who would like to bike in diverse and underserved communities, especially Black, Indigenous, people of color, and people with disabilities. What does this adoption curve also tell us we have to do? Well, it does tell us that we also have to listen to the concerns. We need to listen to the skeptics that were on the far right-hand side of the graph, because those people also are Minnesotans. Those people also live within our state. The other thing is their criticisms and concerns can often sometimes have really good insight into things and how we can improve a certain way we're doing things. So to approach those concerns, we can either acknowledge what they are and then educate and organize with some proper framing, or we could then start with acknowledge and mitigate with policy, regulation, and infrastructure guidance if we do feel like there's something that is going to be a negative outcome. What this will require us to do is research and develop an understanding of those concerns. So I have a fun question here for you. If you had to guess, where do you think the future of e-bikes are heading in your community? Where would you say they're going? And I think there should be a poll launching here soon as well. Wow. These results are surprising actually. Hopefully it's a lot of there's a lot of optimism here, it looks like. Right now it's looking like folks are saying, yeah, these e-bikes are and other bike-like modes they're really becoming mainstream. And I think we are starting to see that. And I think we are starting to see some segmentation of that early mainstream market actually happening. And so it's really interesting to see that you all see that. A few folks say it'll stay in the early market, and probably the smartest folks of the group are probably saying that your guess is as good as mine. So um, you're probably more realistic than optimistic, but we'll see how it goes. All right, we'll keep that poll going as we transition over to Matthew.
Yes. So another really important aspect of this plan is understanding who bikes. And I think that's a really interesting question, especially because this plan is intended to help MnDOT identify and build on their role for biking. And so folks that are planning for and designing for people in the street, I think should have an understanding and an empathy for those people, and that includes people biking. We often talk about designing for people of all ages and abilities and human-centered design. And I think just understanding who is out there riding across our state is really important. Go to the next slide. So there's two aspects of this. The first one is quantitative, so the data side of it. Then the second part that we'll get into in engagement is qualitative. So what we did is a comparison of simulated trip data across Minnesota, and really due to some data issues focused on 18 plus, and that's biking trips and then trips of all modes, and then where possible compared to national studies. And so that approach is a replica activity-based travel demand model, which are simulated trips based on a combination of mobile location data, consumer resident data, built environment data, and then economic activity data. And so we chose a Thursday in the spring that we during the week that we assume would be relatively normal and didn't account for any like weekend spikes or things like that. And we feel a medium level of certainty in the results, which is good for our trends. And so what we found on the next slide is, I think, really interesting. And all of these bullets here are compared to overall trips. So people who are more likely to bike have lower income, could identify as a person of color. And then an interesting one, sort of the maybe extremes or the bookends of education. So having a high school level degree or less, or an advanced degree, again, compared to overall Minnesotans. And then people who are less likely to bike, own a vehicle, or who bike less are likely to own a vehicle, be employed, and then live in a single family home and likely own that home. So those are just some interesting trends that we've noticed. And then really, I think one of the main things to take away here is that all types of Minnesotans are biking. Um, and I'll just note sort of extemporaneously that we hear all the time in this work that nobody bikes, and people have generally some perceptions of biking out there that I think this could help help counter in some degree. And so a little bit more on our research findings and looking at why people currently bike and why people don't bike is there's a lot of health benefits. We heard bike infrastructure, social characteristics, safety playing a huge role in how comfortable and safe people feel can impact their biking habits. And then how it feels, so their experience biking, how much it costs. So often it can be less costly to bike than to own and drive a car. And then convenience and the practical aspects of it. So these are some facts that motivate people to bike or to continue to bike. And we reference those a little bit, and I can just let you read those as well. And then again, a summary on the next slide of why people don't bike. Again, I mentioned this a little bit, and there's just some more text on that here. So on the next slide, I think this has been confirmed over and over again. It was one of the main questions in the previous bike plan was that a visual preference survey, and just people prefer separation from moving vehicles. We know that from other cities across the nation. And so that remains really important. Like people just don't want to have a moving car next to them because that's scary. And that's just something we really need to think about as we're planning and designing bikeways in Minnesota. So the next topic is the Diverse Bicycling Perspectives group. Um, and Jesse noted that a little bit before. But we wanted to identify between 10 and 15. I think we have a few more individuals across the state that are relatively new to this and represent the diversity of our state. And so there is compensation for this group, which I think is a really unique and interesting aspect of this group. And they'll meet in a variety of ways. So there'll be a number of focus group meetings where they can hear from each other, and then also one-on-one touch points with the project team to just share their perspectives. And it could come from a variety of perspectives. I'll note we are still really interested in identifying tribal members and people with disabilities in that group. And so we've been partnering with community-based organizations for recruitment and trying to find a good mix of perspectives across the state. And to date, we've talked to 9 people who have shared their initial stories, which I think is really interesting to hear the results so far. Because of the contrast, we've heard that bicycling can be seen as both very positive, as a symbol of freedom. People think that it's practical, it's a healthy alternative to cars. And then here is an important key, especially in communities with supportive infrastructure. So where it feels safe, where steps have been taken to make streets feel safer. And then in other communities where car culture is more dominant, biking can be associated negatively. So lower social status, viewed as inconvenient or safe or unsafe. I've heard anecdotally, there's parts of the state where if you're biking, people may assume you have DWI, just different things like that. So perceptions we're finding in this group, and I think in public engagement overall, is and can often be dependent on context. So as I noted, in some places biking is very positive, sometimes it's negative. It's interesting to already go around the state, Rochester, Detroit Lakes, and in Minneapolis just in the past week. Sometimes biking is mainly recreation. Sometimes it's just an important way to get around, so a transportation purpose. And then talking to Minneapolis public school students yesterday, sometimes it's just fun and a great way to be social with your friends, things like that. So as I noted, we're continuing outreach for the tribal representatives of people with disabilities. And yeah, I think I'll leave it at that and turn it over to Caroline.
All right, thanks, Matthew. And hi, everybody. Thank you all again for being here with us this morning. Again, my name is Caroline Ketchum. I'm an active transportation planner with the Office of Transit and Active Transportation at MnDOT. And along with Will Wislow, I'm one of the co-PMs for public engagement on this project. And just to situate us in the kinds of stakeholders we are reaching and where you all fit in, we have 3 tiers of stakeholders that we will be reaching out to. This isn't to say that tier 3 is less important, just that this is a distinction in how people are going to engage and what kind of time and guidance they'll be providing. So you all fit in tier 1 as our government and tribal partners. That tier also includes our district advisory committees, as well as our project advisory committee and DBP. These folks, including you all, are going to help to guide our participation strategy and our schedule for participation. Our next tier is tier 2, and this is community groups, organizations, bike clubs, bike shops, schools, so community institutions. And these folks are going to play a really vital role in helping us do outreach to community members. They have relationships that we don't have. And so they're gonna provide guidance and assistance in that way. And then, of course, we are also speaking to the general public. We want to hear from Minnesotans. We want to know what folks are thinking about biking, what makes folks bike more, bike less, and how they're feeling about this plan. And when we developed a public participation plan as we were putting this project together, that we did collaboratively in-house and with our consultant team. And one thing that was really important to us to establish was that in order for our public engagement to be successful, we should be hearing from our priority populations at least proportionate to the demographics of Minnesota. So priority populations are this list that you see on the screen, and some of those groups include people in rural communities, youth, Black, Indigenous people of color, as well as tribal members, low income, immigrants, non-English speakers, older adults, and people with disabilities. In order to assess how we're doing on this engagement, we're going to collect optional and anonymous demographic data. And once we've done some of this engagement, we're going to look back and say, how are we doing? Are we reaching the people we need to reach, and adjust our strategies as needed? So, a little overview of our public engagement process. We'll be doing this in 2 phases. The first, which we're in right now, is our insight engagement phase. So we are out around the state talking to Minnesotans, lots of different places. And our next engagement phase is our accountability phase. And we're doing this in 2 phases because we wanted to be able to communicate to people, hey, here's what we heard from you. We took that and we put it in the plan, and we want to be able to show you that we were listening to what you said. So we'll be doing our second round of engagement post drafting the plan. We wanted to make sure also that the engagement activities that we're offering are fun. Biking is really fun. I think that's something that we all know intuitively as people who bike or maybe interested in biking. But when you're doing a very serious statewide plan, we don't want to lose sight of that. We also want it to be experiential. So we want to give people the opportunities to try out maybe modes that they haven't tried before. We also are emphasizing bringing engagement to where people already are instead of having them come to us. That's a pretty basic tenet of good community engagement. And I also want to note that we are not exclusively showing up at bike-related events. We want to hear from people who bike and who identify as cyclists, but we also want to hear from people who don't bike or don't think of themselves as people who bike. And so we are attending a wide variety of community events. And I also want to mention here that this process does include input from our diverse bicycling perspectives focus group, which is an opportunity for folks to provide more in-depth feedback than they may be able to in a survey or at a public event, and really dig into some of those factors that influence why people do or don't bike. We are also employing a bunch of different strategies to get the word out about this plan. And some of these strategies include, we have an updated website. Our Let's Talk Transportation page is up and being updated. We have a Gov delivery list that you can sign up for. And I don't know if this is live yet, but we should have a separate Gov delivery list for our government and tribal partners specifically. So keep an eye on our Let's Talk Transportation website if you want to receive some more targeted updates based on your roles as local government partners. We'll also be using social media as well as earned media, partnering with our partners for promotions, and of course, on-site communication as well. And this is a statewide plan, so we want to have a statewide presence. During our phase 1 engagement, we're going to do between 8 to 16 events. So we're going to do at least one in each MnDOT district. As we're going through this process, we are working with the hosts of these events to gauge if they meet our engagement goals, particularly connecting with our priority populations. So we're trying to be very intentional and strategic about where we're going in the district. And we've got a lot of stuff coming up, so we would love it if you would come out and say hi. So far, we have been to Detroit Lakes, Rochester, and the Let's Roll event yesterday in Minneapolis. I was there. It was super fun, lots of energy, lots of kiddos on bikes. Um, this is what we have scheduled so far, and stay tuned for more. We are going to be out and about at different community festivals, celebrations, bike rides, health fairs, etc. So keep an eye on this list. We'll also have this posted on our Let's Talk Transportation page. And we love if you would come say hi and encourage people to attend these events. And this is the Let's Talk Transportation page that I keep referencing. That URL is down there. This is a great way to follow along with what we're up to, keep up with where we will be. Um, Once we have a survey developed, we'll be posting that on the website. So please keep an eye out for that and encourage other folks to take it as well. We'd love to hear from a really wide range of people. And at this point, I'm going to ask Will to share the poll. We would love to hear from you to brainstorm some ideas about how you all can help us get the word out about our engagement survey. Okay, awesome. Looks like emails and newsletters are a pretty effective strategy, as well as social media. So that's good to see. Appreciate you guys sharing some of your insights here. Maybe let's leave the poll up for a few minutes. And at this point, I'm going to hand it back over, I believe, to Matthew. So thanks, everybody, and hope to see you at an event soon.
All right. So one of the early tasks for this plan is called Make the Case for Bicycle Investments. And many of us on this call who are already bought into biking can probably list benefits off the top of our heads that would be persuasive to us. But we're also not the ones who need to be convinced of the importance of this. So our approach to this task has been to first understand who doubts the importance of bikes and bike-like modes, and then gather data that addresses those doubts. We're hoping this approach will help us communicate better with people who are not already bought into biking, and that we can avoid just preaching to the choir. So we'll have another poll here, basically asking if you can rank the following common doubts and concerns you've heard about bicycling in your community. And then I think it would be fun and interesting if you shared some of those stories in chat as well. There's the poll. And I'm guessing people can see how to do that, but you can like pull different answers up or down for your ranking and then submit.
Now, hoping that ranking exercise works for folks. It kind of crashed on my end. And so if it's not working for you, maybe you can, like Matthew said, maybe share in the chat to some concerns and doubts you've heard around bicycling in your community.
And I'll just share an impromptu story in case it'll inspire others. But when I worked for the city of Minneapolis in Public Works, we would often come up with the top 10 questions that we don't want to hear in public meetings, mainly because we wanted to be prepared to answer them. And I think we could probably all those would probably pop up on what we're talking about. So let's move on to the next slide then. Ready? So we gathered concerns, and this is what we found in sort of 4 big categories. A lot of doubts come down to a few core concerns, so like safety, cost benefit, identity, and fairness. And then the next several slides gets into this a bit further. So yeah, improve safety, encourage significant increases in ridership, so getting more people riding. It's good for the economy. Investments in bike infrastructure is fair and practical use of public funds, and then also independence for everyone. On the next slide. So this is back to that thing that we've heard for well over a decade, is simply building separated bikeways is just safer for everyone. And it's not always just about safety for the bicyclists, but it's safer for everyone, including people walking, biking, driving, and taking transit. And so sometimes emphasizing the safe street is maybe more important than emphasizing just bicycling alone. And sorry, I'm 2 slides ahead. I just realized. Can we go to number 2? And then one more. There we go. And then, so this one, when it's safe, more people ride when cities build protected bike lanes. And so studies from across North America show that adding protected bike lanes significantly increases bike ridership on those streets, with rates ranging from 21% to 171%. Next slide. Economic studies have found that although people who bike spend slightly less per trip than those who drive, people who bike visit more often and spend more money over time. And this is a big thing that we hear in street design a lot, especially if there would be impacts to parking. And so I think that's a really good stat to sort of keep in the back of your mind if that comes up. And then the next one, number 4. So basically, it costs less to build and maintain bikeways. I think that's really important, and it's often really about fairness. Another sort of anecdote is I sometimes hear in this work that people who bike don't pay for the streets, and that's not true either, given how bikeways are funded often. And also people biking, the weight of the vehicles is not damaging the roads as much as cars and trucks. And moving on to the next one. So then freedom. I think when people feel safe biking, more people have freedom to get around their community independently. I think this is interesting in a variety of ways. This concept of free range kids and how I know I used to see my bike as an opportunity for freedom and just biking around all day. And then also for seniors, biking and bike-like vehicles can really help with independence and getting around their community and their neighborhood without having to drive. Then we're going to turn it over to Jesse for what's next.
Thanks, folks. Just a few more slides here to wrap up our webinar here today. So really appreciate you making it this far. So you may be wondering, what is next for the Bike Plus plan? We have 3 things here to share with you that hopefully you can kind of take part in, and we'll try to post these links in the chat as well. So as we mentioned before earlier in the presentation, we are having engagement events throughout the summer, and you can follow along where we're going to be at on our website, on our Let's Talk Transportation page. The other thing, if you're interested and you feel like you need to share more, and this particular webinar today hasn't been able to allow you to share everything that you want to share about related to MnDOT's bicycle planning, feel free to book a follow-up meeting with me. So you can book a one-on-one webinar meeting with me. All you have to do is also go to the link there that will like force add a meeting to my calendar, and we can chat for 30 minutes. What your thoughts are, how you feel like you can become a better part of this process and make our bike plan and biking in Minnesota better as well. So I do encourage folks to go to that link if you do really want to share more. And then the last thing here is we, as an agency, also manage the statewide bicycle system, statewide bikeway map. This map is only as good as the data that we receive that goes into it. And so one ask here is to update your bikeways data, preferably to the Minnesota Bikeway Data Standard, which I think if you just Google Minnesota Bikeway Standard, Bikeway Data Standard, it should be the first result that comes up. And email that updated bikeways data to the email address on the screen there, which is bicyclemap.dot@state.mn.us. We would really appreciate receiving those updated bikeways data so that the statewide bicycle system map can actually reflect all the great work that is going along in our system. The other great thing about you providing your bikeways data is that will help us in the future as we go to develop our priority tool as well. We do not know exactly what the priority tool will look like yet, but we do have thoughts about what will go into it. And one of those things might be just where existing networks exist. And so we don't know where those are exactly unless you provide them to us. So if you can do that, that would be really great. We have two follow-up polls here for you to answer, and you have to answer them before we get into the Q&A section. So please do so. So I mentioned this is a new webinar format that we are trying out to help with consultation, cooperation, and coordination in the statewide planning process. And so one, we want to know, was this webinar a valuable use of your time? And I'd appreciate you being honest with that. I think we have a rating of ribbons. So one ribbon would be, no, this definitely was not a useful use of my time, and 5 ribbons would be, yes, this was definitely a good use of my time. And please consider the one-on-one follow-up, the ability to schedule a one-on-one follow-up meeting as kind of a part of this experience. The second question with the poll is, does this webinar and follow-up format meet your needs for consultation, cooperation, and coordination? And it's a little nerdy, but for definitions of what those mean, if you go to the Code of Federal Regulations, there are some kind of specific definitions that say what those 3 C's mean. I'll just say them here just so you have a brief sort of understanding. Consultation means that one or more parties confer with other identified parties in accordance with an established process. Prior to taking action, considers the views of other parties and periodically informs them about actions taken. That's a mouthful. Cooperation means that parties involved in carrying out the transportation planning and programming processes work together to achieve a common goal or objective. And coordination means the cooperative development of plans, programs, and schedules among agencies and entities with legal standing and adjustment of such plans, programs, and schedules achieve general consistency. Consistency is key there, as appropriate. So I'd appreciate you answering those polls if it's opened up already. And please be honest. You won't hurt my feelings. And while you are filling out that poll, we'll keep it open while we head into a Q&A session. So feel free, if you have questions, feel free to enter those into the Q&A section. Please try not to enter them into the chat. Please utilize the Q&A portion. And we will do our best to answer those either in the Q&A section, or we can also answer those verbally as well. And if your question is a little more nuanced and it's hard to type out, we can try to figure out a way to unmute you as well so that you can verbally ask that question too. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much for attending this webinar. And I'm really interested in hearing your questions. And I'm much more interested in working with you all in the future to make this Bike Plus plan a really great plan. Not because then we have this great plan, but because then more people in Minnesota find it easier, more comfortable to bike around our state and experience the things that we have to experience and get to the places that they need to go to. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And I don't see any questions yet. So I will keep it open. I don't know if Will, if you can test one out, maybe. Might not be working either. Is it working? Oh, I think I see a red dot. Oh, my favorite variety of apple. Thanks for asking, Will. Is that Will? Will, did you ask that?
I
All right,
did.
so I'm going to answer it since no one has posted a question yet, because I have apple opinions. Because I also make hard cider. So if you were to ask my favorite variety of apple, it's very complicated because I have apples that I like to eat, and then I have apples that I like to actually make other beverages with. And so I am actually growing 4 apples in my yard right now, 4 apple trees, I should say, not just 4 apples. That'd be disappointing. And I think my favorite one is going to be the keepsake apple because it will be able to be eaten and used in my other beverages. Ooh, I see someone asking about Apple rankings. I'll have to give it a look afterwards. This is just gonna be a conversation about apples from this point forward, so I appreciate it. See the comment that there's no other questions, lots of info to absorb. Yes, we did share a lot of information today. If you feel like you missed some of it, I would encourage you to view the recording, which we will give you all a link. Otherwise, you can also schedule a one-on-one follow-up meeting if any of that needed further clarification. So I appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna give it like 2 more minutes for questions, and I'm okay with silence. All right, someone says they don't see the Q&A. If you do have a question and the Q&A is not showing up for you, you can use the chat too. I won't forbid it. I see regions if anyone would like to be contacted for outreach, etc. opportunities. Appreciate that. We can get in contact, share the events we're going to be at, and then what other ways we can kind of collaborate on improving the folks we're reaching out to. Okay, I do see one question here. Is there something you're looking for feedback on specifically? At this point, in the future webinars, we may have more things to seek feedback on. Since this is the first webinar, I should have specified this a little bit more. The first webinar here is really kind of an overview and an intro to the project, understanding kind of where we're heading and where we've been, at least in the beginning stages so far. So at the moment, not looking too specifically at particular feedback. And so we will, though I will say that if you are uncomfortable sharing some specific feedback, I do encourage you to do the meeting bookings, which reminds me I need to put in some of those links into the chat if they haven't been in there already. It looks like Will did enter in the link for the booking meetings with me. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. So I appreciate y'all for attending. Again, look forward to future webinar meetings. I hope this all worked for you well, and I hope you can get out there, enjoy the trails, enjoy separated bike lanes and the comfortable facilities that are increasingly a part of our communities. If you don't have enough of those, continue advocating for those, and really hope to hear what you all think about between now and in the next webinar. So I appreciate it. With that, we're going to say goodbye. Appreciate it, folks. Thank you for coming.